Okay guys, today we're going to show you how to install a line lock. All a line lock does is you hit the switch, or you press on the brakes, you hit the switch, it holds the pressure on your front brakes when you let off the pedal for burnouts and staging and whatever other hoonery and shenanigans you get up to.
Well, here we go, let's get those wheels out on the road. It may get dusty, but that's the way she goes. We'll build some greasy old cars and drink our AG. Hey, don't you know, it's partly built.
So this is just a generic, what is it, like Performance World?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Line lock. This one's actually a spare one Steven had laying around, so it's not in a box or anything, but we're gonna make a video and show you how to properly install one. So let's get at it.
Yeah.
So to install the solenoid, you have to plumb it in with the brake lines and you have to wire it up. Simple as that. So to wire it up, all you need to do is connect the wires to a power, a ground, and have a switch. We already have lines run in our truck to a switch, some wires, so you can either crimp the fitting or crimp the wires, or you can solder them. We're choosing to solder, so we've got a soldering iron, some solder, clamp to hold the wires, stripping pliers, side cutters, some shrink tubing, and a torch for the shrink tubing. Then for the hydraulic side, all you're going to need is some wrenches, some thread tape, some piping, a couple fittings, and a flaring tool of some sort. We have your garden variety Chinese one you get in any hardware store. We got a nicer Matco one here, and then we have the Mac Daddy Eastwood brake flaring tool. We just got this. I haven't even tried it yet because I really struggle with these cheap Chinese ones spreading on me. And we had some issues with a couple of the dies in this Matco kit, and it just took a while to get replacement ones. So I got this one. You don't have to have anything that fancy. This will do it. So that takes care of the plumbing and the wiring. And then all you got to do is mount it. You just got to drill a couple holes, put a couple bolts in. Simple as that. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you're doing any wiring, it's just a safety thing. You want to lock out any energy source. So for us, that's our battery. If we disconnect the ground, there's no way to complete the circuit. Every ground wire has been disconnected. Now we don't have to worry about arcing anything out, blowing any fuses, burning anything. And especially on the stuff we're building here, there's enough fuel leaks and whatnot. We don't want to risk it. So step one, unhook your battery.
Next step in installing this thing is finding where you want to mount it and all that fun stuff. And, you know, I'm thinking right there about as good as any. So I'm just gonna roughly set it here. I just mark some holes with a drill bit, just zing them.
You want to make it somewhere that's sturdy, out of the way, and not hard to plumb to. Being as our master cylinder is right there with the lines coming out of it, it's not going to be too hard to make everything work.
So just mark them diagonal of each other. Just kind of run your drill, give it a quick shot like that, and give this a quick shot like that. And there you go, you got some marks at least you can use as reference, and you can drill through without that damn thing in your road. Okay, so now after your holes are all drilled, just feed your bolts in to the bottom side so you don't run threads down into your wheel well, because honestly there's just really no reason for that. And that. And just start it, no reason to tighten them up yet. Have your next one, shove her through. If I could find the damn hole. There we go. Oh, I just dropped the lock washer. Whatever, I'll deal with that in a minute. But anyways, there you go. Now, whenever you're ready, just suck down the bolts. I'm gonna go fish for that lock washer, but when we're back, this thing will be all bolted in, and we can start dealing with the electrical side and then the hydraulics.
It's a good idea to do the electrical before you do the plumbing, just so you don't have to worry about any oil or anything on your wires, especially if you're trying to solder. Just keep the impurities away as much as you can.
But for your ground wire, what I did on the Firebird, and I'm going to do again on this, just throw an eyelet on it and just literally ground it just right to the mounting bolts. Will work just tickety-boo. So I'm going to get some shrink tube on this one, crimp the eyelet on it, solder it up, and then solder this thing into this wire here, which is our power feed for the line lock. I don't know if you can see that, but so yeah, I'll get wiring those and go from there.
Always double check that you put your shrink tube on before you connect your eyelet, because even if you double check, you will still forget 90% of the time.
Same with flaring brake lines.
Same when we go to do the brake lines. Always double check you put your fitting on, because if you don't, you will have forgotten it.
And another thing too, if you're making a wicked bend, make sure you didn't put your fitting on too far, like before the bend, or else you'll really piss yourself off with that one.
We'll go over that when we start making the lines.
Okay, well that cools down. I'm gonna grab main power wire and get it all hooked up in here.
Just remember, if you're not putting a removable connector in line with your wiring, always have it routed where you need it before, because you're not going to be able to move it after. And Steven has routed his power supply wire from his switch where he wants it. You want a good overlap and intertwinement of your wires, just to make it easier to solder.
So I guess I could show that. So what I generally do, if I got this Macro thing, it was a self-feeding kind of solder tool. It just didn't work out for me what I was wanting. But I like it 'cause it's got soft jaws, because those alligator clip styles, they just dig into the shielding, not a fan. So I just put one wire in there, roughly halfway. And when I feed the next wire in from the side, I just butt them up and just kind of force them into each other so they intertwine themselves. Grab your fingers and just kind of squeeze them and twist about. Get them so they're tight and don't have wires fraying out everywhere. And then once you get that done, you're ready to get it with the soldering iron and just feed some in there.
And remember, double check that your shrink tube is there. So now that all our wiring is hooked up, before we do any plumbing, before we do any routing of the wires,
we're gonna test it.
We're gonna test it. So I'm gonna hook the ground cable back up. Steven is going to attempt to run the switch.
Hold the switch now.
We're gonna hit the switch, and you can hear it click. It's very faint, but it does click. So we know it's working. We also have a light on our dash that tells us when this is on. So the first step in plumbing it is you need to determine which is the front brake and which is the rear brake coming out of the master cylinder. So you can do that just by following the lines. We followed the lines, and it turns out on this master cylinder, front is front and rear is rear. It's not the same on all master cylinders. I've got an old 66 Galaxy and it is opposite. So we need to disconnect the line from the front port on the master cylinder. So now that we've determined which line is our front brakes and we've undone it from the master cylinder, we need to find a spot in the line where we can cut the line and route a new one up to our solenoid. We need to roughly measure how much line we need here to follow the route we need. And you can do it with a simple piece of string or a wire or a tape measure. So to come off there, we want to go down over to the frame, or over to the inner fender, and then to the solenoid. And it will be the supply, so it has to go in the top of the solenoid. We're going to take this off. We're going to remove this nut. This is an oversized nut onto a 3/16 line. So that nut will fit any 3/16 line with a normal inverted flare. So to ensure proper routing, we want to put our adapter fittings in. And this will be the output from the solenoid, which on our solenoid is out the back side. So Steven is going to put the adapter fitting in. And this is adapting us from 1/8" pipe, national pipe, to 3/16 inverted flare. So we're going to set that there for now, and we're going to do a rough measuring with our brake line. So to do this, you can try and bend the brake line under the steering but I recommend removing the bolts and disconnecting the steering shaft so you can lift it up, because if you try and bend your line under that, you're just going to kink your line. Trust me, I've been lazy, I've tried it, it happens every time. So we're just going to pull the bolts out of the steering shaft and lift the steering shaft out of our way. The steering shaft doesn't have to lift off very far, it just has to give us room to go past it without kinking the line.
First, we're going to cut this nut off because we need it in the other spot anyways. So, I'm going to grab the old cutter, and judging from the line I have here, I should be able to get away with cutting it here. You all know how to use a tube and cutter. If you don't, just spin her around the world, give her a whirl, tighten it up, spin her again, keep going till the line falls off.
Now you want to clean any of the burrs out of the center of the line, and we just have a little deburring tool. You can use a knife, a file, a drill bit, any of that will work. You're just cleaning off that edge. All right, so we just moved our solenoid because we didn't have enough line. Rule number one, always make sure you have enough line.
Usually helps.
Anyway, it's not a big deal. There's lots of room in this truck to put it, so it actually makes it so both lines have to be shorter. But anyway, Stephen is now going to put a 90-degree
Right here.
right there in the line. So now we're going to cut the line.
So now I can put the cutter as very far out before that last bend there. I can shove it out as far as possible and cut off as little of this line as possible so I can leave as much length here. Because the more you got, the easier it is to flare it just because you got more room to kind of work in here. So I'll just go around the world and cut this dang thing.
Now that we have the cut, once again, we'll just clean the inside of that tube. Okay, now we're going to do some flares. We're going to flare the line on the truck first. You can use one of these tools. Mine is a piece of crap. It was a $40 one I bought from the local store, and the problem is that you can tighten these nuts all you want once your tube is through, but these jaws here stretch out and it allows the tube to push through instead of putting a nice flare to it. So we're not going to use this one. I do have a video on how to use one of these, and I'll put a card up in the corner for that. This is Stephen's tool. It's actually nice because it's very compact and small. We're going to use it to do the line on the truck. So you need your 3/16 die, your 3/16 insert, and the compressor, and then just an Allen wrench to open and close the die jaws.
Okay, now that the fitting is on, now we can get your die put in place. And the way you're going to want to get your depth set is on your bit. You'll have this bottom shoulder here. So the way to do it is set it just onto here and line the top of your line up with that shoulder. Kind of roughly. Like, you don't have to be exactly perfect, but get her close. I just put a bit of squeeze tension on here because they got teeth in them, so they'll kind of hold you in place. And then just snug these screws up a bit. When they're snug and the line isn't going to screw off on you. Double check it. We still look to be good. Yep. So now just suck these jaws right nice down and tight. And then if you also want a bit of extra assurance, after you're nice and tight, do a triple check. It ain't gonna hurt. You're still good. Now, on this tool, it's sometimes a bit of a bugger.
Triple check that your nut is on the line.
Yeah. And then make sure that the arbor actually screws on, because these threads, it can be a bugger sometimes.
If you don't quite have the jaws tight enough, it will not thread on.
Okay, so now it threads, we're good there. So, take your first bit, shove it in the line.
That's also why you need to clean out the inside. If you don't clean out the inside of that tube with a deburring tool of some sort or a knife, those will not slide in, or they'll be really tough to get in, and a lot of times you can end up breaking the tip off them.
Alrighty, so now we're at this point. So thread your arbor on there. Oh, now it's being a bugger. There we go. thread her on all the way. Now, us in this shop, we don't have a 7/8 wrench or 22 mil, so crescent wrench time just to hold this in place. And then screw this. Yep, if you want to take that.
See with your arm there.
No, screw your main screw down. And then just start tightening it up.
And you want to go till you feel it bottom.
Right there. So we'll back that off. Take this tool right out of there.
And now you'll pull your
Now you pull your
insert.
little piece out.
And that's the first part of your double flare.
Now you just send this back down on there. And send your screw down. Put your back wrench on. And then do that whole procedure right over again.
We can put our little bend in the end of this tube here. Just make sure you slide your fitting up before you put the bend in. We'll get it threaded into our solenoid, and then we'll put our second fitting in and figure out the next line. Now that we got that line on, let's put the other adapter fitting in. So now that we have it pointing where we want it, we'll get the line ready. I'm going to remove the nut that was on it and put the one that went into our master cylinder on here so that I can use this really nice flare that's already in the line. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to the truck and get a rough idea of what we want to do. So what I want to do is I want to put a slight bend in this. To do that, we have a tool. Like I said, you could just bend it over a piece of pipe if you needed to. So I want to put like 30, 45 degree bend in it. Then I want to take it over and always keep bringing it back and checking to make sure that you'll be okay. So I need to just take the tape measure, and from where I have my bend, I need to figure out where I need to put my second bend. I want my second bend about 7 inches, 7¼ inches past my first bend is where I want the center of my second bend. So now, if I take my line and I put that in the center of my first bend, I want the end of my second bend to be there. So if that's where I want the end of my bend, I insert that line at 0, 0 on my tool. And that will be the end of my bend. And then I need to get this angled how I need it on my master cylinder. And then just put my 90-degree bend in it. So that is the best way to put a good bend in without cracking and crimping. And then I want to be sure that my line will be where I need it. Yep, we're good there. And I can even take this now and cut it about here. And then for this line, because I can do it easily out of the truck, we're going to use the Eastwood flaring tool. So we're doing 3/16 line. So we want to put the 3/16 jaws in and make sure we're using the proper end of them. We're not doing a din flare. We're doing a regular 45-degree inverted flare. So you'll put that in, you'll lock the pin in, back that out, lock the pin in. I want to insert my line, make sure I have plenty of length, which I do. I want to put my nut on and ensure that I still have enough line to get my fitting in. I'm going to insert it. I'm going to handle on the tool. Gonna set it to option 0 because it'll set my depth. Tighten this. And then I want to find 3/16 option 1 and just do that till it bottoms. Set option 2 for 3/16. Go till it bottoms. Loosen this off. Pull the pin. So I've never used this thing before. So problem was I just didn't push it far enough. Now we got a perfect flare. And there you have it. Both lines are into the line lock. It's wired. Now all you have to do is just bleed your entire brake system to ensure you have no bubbles, and line lock's installed. There you have it, guys. A quick line lock install. Not much to it, even when you're as incapable as the two of us are, because as you've seen, we had to move the solenoid once. We had to mess around with some bends a couple times. But anybody that wants to install a line lock on your vehicle, there's nothing to it. Just make sure you always do a double flare on brake lines, and make sure you get the system bled really well when you're done. Thanks for watching, guys. For more content on this truck or any of the other projects we have going on, like the V12 Corvette or the 66 Galaxy, make sure to tune into Barkley Built on YouTube, and you can follow us on Instagram at Barkley Built, and also on Facebook. There's a Barkley Built Facebook page. Thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy.